Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquart of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquartlawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, on the radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. Today we're going to be talking with Pete Sepp, who is the president of the nonprofit and nonpartisan National Taxpayers Union. And we're going to be focusing on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Pete, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Tell us what's happening today that we need to know about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Well, it's almost what's happening every minute. There's always a new development with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I call it B3 for short. What this is, of course, is the centerpiece legislation from President Trump and Republican leaders in Congress to do several things. One, to extend and improve upon the tax relief laws that were enacted in 2017. Another, to make very strategic restraints and certain reductions in federal programs. Spending will still go up, just not as quickly. And wherever possible, to enact certain regulatory reforms that have a fiscal impact. So B3 does all of those things under a process called reconciliation.
Tell us what your organization does and why are you so knowledgeable about this?
Well, my organization, National Taxpayers Union, was founded all the way back in 1969 by a graduate student, the name of James Dale Davidson. He had just finished working for Richard Nixon's presidential campaign, and he realized at the time neither political party necessarily had the interests of taxpayers at heart 100% of the time. He had hoped to join a taxpayer group in Washington, D.C. that was nonpartisan, conservative fiscally, but still nonpartisan. He couldn't find one in the phone book, so he decided to start his own. And that's how National Taxpayers Union was born. Our mission is to work for lower, fairer, simpler taxes, less wasteful government spending at all levels, and accountability from public officials. And by all levels, I mean not only from the cities and the counties and the states and the federal government, but all the way up to the international sphere.
Can you tell us what's the difference between a 501c3 charity, public charity, and the way that you're organized?
National Taxpayers Union is organized as a 501c4 public and social welfare organization. And what that allows us to do is to lobby Congress. And the 501c3 organization, our National Taxpayers Union Foundation, is devoted solely to research and public education. It does not lobby Congress and advocate for legislation.
Okay, so you have two organizations that are both focused on helping taxpayers do what you said before, lower taxes, simpler taxes.
Yes, and less wasteful government spending. Our C3 arm, National Taxpayers Union Foundation, also has a public interest litigation function, meaning that we'll take state and local governments as well as the IRS to court when we feel there is an important precedent to set on behalf of taxpayer rights or to challenge an unfair or retroactive activity. So we've been involved in a lot of cases. We file friend of the court briefs. We've also represented clients. One of our most recent victories was in Colorado, defending a constitutional limit on taxes and spending that requires voter approval for taxes to go up. There was a water district in Colorado that didn't see it that way, and they raised taxes without a public vote. We won. And now this water district's going to have to pay damages to the taxpayers they never asked in taking money out of their wallets.
I'm sure that makes all your constituents happy. I wanted to remind everybody the reason that I'm having Pete Sepp from the National Taxpayers Union on the show today is because it's our mission to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. And this is an issue that's very confusing to people because of the way Congress works. And so I want you to help us understand that as we go along. And I want to start with the word reconciliation. What makes reconciliation different than other types of budget and spending bills?
Well, reconciliation, as the term might imply to most folks, is a way that the House and the Senate resolve their differences, reconcile them in a budget process. Reconciliation differs from other types of fiscal policy, like a tax bill, say, that's increasing or decreasing one rate of tax on one type of tax. It differs from appropriations. That's the annual process where a large part of the federal government gets funded, transportation, defense. If the federal government remains involved in education, that's where the appropriations process would come in. Reconciliation is a different process that sets overall tax and spending targets for usually a 10-year or 9-year period of time. The House passes its version, the Senate passes its version, they confer or they swap amendments in the nature of substitutes, all kinds of technical terms, but they arrive at a blueprint for taxes and spending over the long term that contain a variety of specific policies. And what that does is set the tone for appropriations and tax policy year by year that Congress will later work on. The key to reconciliation is that, unlike most legislation that goes through the Senate, where you require at least 60 votes out of 100 to proceed with debate on the bill, reconciliation can go forward with just 51 votes, a majority of votes. And that's why it's such a powerful tool when one party finds itself with relatively narrow control of the legislative chambers. If you don't have at least 60 votes in the Senate as the majority party, most of your bills are going nowhere. The minority party can block them. And so, with Republicans having just 53 seats in the Senate, they've got to use reconciliation to get some of their biggest fiscal priorities through.
So this question may be coming out of left field, but I'm just wondering, why doesn't Congress use reconciliation every year? Now, I'm a young man and I've only been following the government and politics for 45 years. So uh, I haven't heard this term reconciliation every year. Like, I do recognize the word appropriation and having a budget. I don't think the federal government's had one of those in a long time. But
No.
but why don't we see this every year?
Well, we see it frequently, often every 2 years, every 3 years. A lot depends upon the fiscal priorities of the party that's in power in Congress, as well as who's president, of course. It can be used at least once a year, but it isn't always, primarily for, well, I'd give it two reasons. One, I hate to be cynical, but Congress really can't walk and chew gum at the same time. It's very difficult for them to get together such a large piece of legislation reflecting broad priorities in taxes and spending each year. They tend to do it every 2 years or three just because of the workload. Another reason is that many members of Congress may prefer to just let that current policy ride. If, for example, you want to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which we can get into for a period of 8 or 9 years, and you do that in the reconciliation process this year, you don't need to worry about it for another 8 or 9 years. So why even bother?
Yeah, I
Those
do.
two
I do want
reasons.
to talk about the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and what happens if it expires and what's important for getting it through on this bill. But we'll head that up in just a moment. I had a question about the reconciliation process again. Um, Now we do know that the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that was a huge feat for 51 or percent of the congressmen to agree on. Um, what changes do you think that the Senate is going to make, and do you think that when it goes back to the House, that the House members will agree with what the Senate changed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And we are getting constant feedback and intelligence from Capitol Hill to our own lobbying team here at National Taxpayers Union. And the conditions keep shifting. As of now, we think that the Senate will probably focus on 3 or 4 areas. One area is the energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. That was passed through a reconciliation process all the way back during the Biden administration.
Okay.
And a number of those energy credits were placed into law that have a huge revenue impact. In fact, a much larger one than originally anticipated. These are credits for developing wind and solar, nuclear energy, for other very advanced renewable technologies, biomass and geothermal. There were also some residential energy efficiency credits that were passed in that bill. Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill passed by the House sought to phase those out because the revenue impact was much larger than originally anticipated. Plus, there's the question of whether these kinds of very narrowly drafted credits designed to influence a specific human behavior, essentially, really belong in the tax code. Maybe there should be something simpler that's neutral and fair to all businesses. And so the House version of One Big Beautiful Bill sunsetted most of those credits on a pretty fast timetable. Most of them expire in either 2026, those are a lot of the consumer energy efficiency credits. Most others that are business oriented for building projects, that's all gone in roughly 2028, a little
Okay.
longer for nuclear. And so
Bef-
many in
Before
the
you
Senate, yes.
Before you get to the other 3 points, we've got to take a break. Just want to remind everybody we're talking with Pete Sepp with the National Taxpayers Union, and we're focusing on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Stay tuned. We're going to talk more.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquart, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquartlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.